Hello, my kiddos. It is your father. Right, so last time we heard the story of the ring up until the time that Isildur lost it. But now we're going to hear the story of the ring from Bilbo. Right, here we go. To some there, Bilbo's tale was wholly new, and they listened with amazement while the old hobbit, actually not at all displeased, recounted his adventure with Gollum at full length. He did not omit a single riddle. He would have given also an account of his party and disappearance from the Shire, if he had been allowed, but Elrond raised his hand. "Well told, my friend," he said, "but that is enough at this time. For the moment it suffices to know that the ring passed to Frodo, your heir. Let him now speak." Then, less willingly than Bilbo, Frodo told of all his dealings with the ring from the day that it passed into his keeping. Every step of his journey from Hobbiton to the ford at Bruinen was questioned and considered, and everything that he could recall concerning the Black Riders was examined. At last he sat down again. "Not bad," Bilbo said to him. "You would have made a good story of it if they hadn't kept on interrupting. I tried to make a few notes, but we shall have to go over it all again together sometime, if I am to write it up. There are whole chapters of stuff before you ever got here." "Yes, it made quite a long tale," answered Frodo, "but the story still does not seem complete to me. I still want to know a good deal, especially about Gandalf." Galdor of the Havens, who sat near by, overheard him. "You speak for me also," he cried, and turning to Elrond, he said, "The wise may have good reason to believe that the halfling's trove is indeed the great ring of long debate, unlikely though that may seem to those who know less. But may we not hear the proofs? And I would ask this also, what of Saruman? He is learned in the lore of the rings, yet he is not among us. What is his counsel, if he knows the things that we have heard?" "The questions that you ask, Galdor, are bound together," said Elrond. "I had not overlooked them, and they shall be answered, but these things it is the part of Gandalf to make clear, and I call upon him last, for it is the place of honor, and in all this matter he has been the chief." "Some, Galdor," said Gandalf, "would think the tidings of Gloin and the pursuit of Frodo proof enough that the halfling's trove is a thing of great worth to the enemy. Yet it is a ring. What then? The 9 the Nazgul keep. The 7 are taken or destroyed." At this Gloin stirred, but did not speak. "The 3 we know of. What then is this one that he desires so much? There is indeed a wide waste of time between the river and the mountain, between the loss and the finding. But the gap in the knowledge of the wise has been filled at last, yet too slowly, for the enemy has been close behind, closer even than I feared. And well it is that not until this year, this very summer as it seems, did he learn the full truth. Some here will remember that many years ago I myself dared to pass the doors of the necromancer in Dol Guldur, and secretly explored his ways, and found thus that our fears were true. He was none other than Sauron, our enemy of old, at length taking shape and power again. Some too will remember also that Sauron dissuaded us from open deeds against him, and for long we watched him only. Yet at last, as his shadow grew, Saruman yielded, and the council put forth its strength and drove the evil out of Mirkwood. And that was in the very year of the finding of the ring, a strange chance, if chance it was. But we were too late, as Elrond foresaw. Sauron also had watched us, and had long prepared against our stroke, governing Mordor from afar through Minas Morgul. where his 9 servants dwelt, until all was ready. Then he gave way before us, but only feigned to flee, and soon after came to the dark tower and openly declared himself. Then for the last time the council met, for now we learn that he was seeking ever more eagerly for the One. We feared then that he had some news of it that we knew nothing of. But Saruman said nay, and repeated what he had said to us before, that the One would never again be found in Middle-earth. At the worst, said he, our enemy knows that we have it not, and that it is still lost. But what was lost may yet be found, he thinks. Fear not. His hope will cheat him. Have I not earnestly studied this matter? Into Anduin the Great it fell, and long ago, while Sauron slept, it was rolled down the river to the sea. There let it lie until the end. Gandalf fell silent, gazing eastward from the porch to the far peaks of the misty mountains, at whose great roots the peril of the world had so long laid hidden. He sighed. There, I was at fault, he said. I was lulled by the words of Saruman the Wise, but I should have sought for the truth sooner, and our peril would now be less. We were all at fault, said Elrond, and but for your vigilance, the darkness, maybe, would already be upon us. But say on. From the first my heart misgave me, against all reason that I knew, said Gandalf, and I desired to know how this thing came to Gollum, and how long he had possessed it. So I set a watch for him, guessing that he would ere long come forth from his darkness to seek for his treasure. He came, but he escaped and was not found. And then, alas, I let the matter rest, watching and waiting only, as we have too often done. Time passed with many cares, until my doubts were awakened again to sudden fear. Whence came the hobbit's ring? What, if my fear was true, should be done with it? Those things I must decide. But I spoke yet of my dread to none, knowing the peril of an untimely whisper, if it went astray. Knowing the peril of an untimely whisper if it went astray. In all the long wars with the Dark Tower, treason has been our greatest foe. That was 17 years ago. Soon I became aware that spies of many sorts, even beasts and birds, were gathered round the Shire, and my fear grew. I called for the help of the Dunedain, and their watch was doubled, and I opened my heart to Aragorn of the heir of Isildur. And I, said Aragorn, counseled that we should hunt for Gollum, too late though it may seem, and since it seemed fit that Isildur's heir should labor to repair Isildur's fault, I went with Gandalf on the long and hopeless search. Then Gandalf told how they had explored the whole length of Wilderland, down even to the mountains of Shadow and the fences of Mordor. There we had rumor of him, and we guessed that he dwelt there long in the dark hills, but we never found him, and at last I despaired. And then in my despair I thought again of the test that might make the finding of Gollum unneeded. The ring itself might tell if it were the one. The memory of words at the council came back to me, words of Saruman, half heeded at the time. I heard them now clearly in my heart. The 9, the 7, and the 3, he said, had each their proper gem. Not so the one. It was round and unadorned, as it were one of the lesser rings, but its maker set marks upon it that the skilled, maybe, could still see and read. What those marks were he had not said. Who now would know? The maker. And Saruman? But great though his lore may be, it must have a source. What hand, save Sauron's, ever held this ring ere it was lost? The hand of Isildur alone. With that thought, I forsook the chase, and passed swiftly to Gondor. In former days, the members of my order had been well received there, but Saruman most of all. Often he had been for long the guest of the lords of the city. Less welcome did the Lord Denethor show me than those of old, and grudgingly he permitted me to search among his hoarded scrolls and books. If indeed you look only, as you say, for records of ancient days and the beginnings of the city, read on, he said. For to me, what was is less dark than what is to come, and that is my care. But unless you have more skill even than Saruman, who has studied here long, you will find naught that is not well known to me, who am master of the lore of this city. So said Denethor, and yet there lie in his hoards many records that few even of the lore masters can now read, for their scripts and tongues have become dark to later men. And Boromir, there lies in Minas Tirith still, unread, I guess, by any save Saruman and myself since the kings failed, a scroll that Isildur made himself, for Isildur did not march away straight from the war in Mordor, as some have told the tale. Some of the north, maybe, Boromir broke in. All know in Gondor that he went first to Minas Anor, and dwelt a while with his nephew Meneldyl, instructing him before he committed to him the rule of the South Kingdom. In that time he planted there the last sapling of the White Tree in memory of his brother. But in that time also he made this scroll, said Gandalf, and that is not remembered in Gondor, it would seem. For this scroll concerns the ring, and thus wrote Isildur therein. The great ring shall go now to be an heirloom of the North Kingdom, but records of it shall be left in Gondor, where also dwell the heirs of Elendil, lest a time come when the memory of these great matters shall grow dim. And after these words Isildur described the ring, such as he found it. It was hot when I first took it, hot as a gled, and my hand was scorched, so that I doubt if ever again I shall be free of the pain of it. Yet even as I write, it is cooled, and it seemed to shrink, though it loseth neither its beauty nor its shape. Already the writing upon it, which at first was as clear as red flame, fadeth, and is now only barely to be read. It is fashioned in an elven script of Eregion, for they have no letters in Mordor for such subtle work. But the language is unknown to me. I deem it to be a tongue of the Black Land, since it is foul and uncouth. What evil it saith, I do not know, but I trace here a copy of it, lest it fade beyond recall. The ring misseth, maybe, the heat of Sauron's hand, which was black and yet burned like fire, and so Gil-galad was destroyed, and maybe were the gold made hot again, the writing would be refreshed. But for my part, I will risk no hurt to this ring, of all the works of Sauron, the only fair. It is precious to me, though I buy it with great pain. Kiddos, hear that? It is precious to me. When I read these words, my quest was ended, for the traced writing was indeed as Isildur guessed, in the tongue of Mordor and the servants of the tower. And what was said therein was already known, for in the day that Sauron first put on the one, Celebrimbor, maker of the three, was aware of him, and from afar he heard him speak these words, and so his evil purposes were revealed. At once I took my leave of Denethor, but even as I went northwards, messages came to me out of Lorien that Aragorn had passed that way, and that he had found the creature called Gollum. Therefore I went first to meet him and hear his tale. Into what deadly perils he had gone alone I dared not guess. There is little need to tell of them, said Aragorn. If a man must needs walk in sight of the Black Gate, or tread the deadly flowers of Morgul Vale, Then perils he will have. I too despaired at last, and I began my homeward journey, and then by fortune I came suddenly on what I sought, the marks of soft feet beside a muddy pool. But now the trail was fresh and swift, and it led not to Mordor but away. Along the skirts of the dead marshes I followed it, and then I had him, lurking by a stagnant mere, peering into the water as the dark eve fell. I caught him. Gollum. He was covered with green slime. He will never love me, I fear, for he bit me, and I was not gentle. Nothing more did I ever get from his mouth than the marks of his teeth. I deemed it the worst part of all my journey, the road back. Watching him day and night, making him walk before me with a halter on his neck, gagged until he was tamed by lack of drink and food, driving him ever towards Mirkwood. I brought him there at last and gave him to the elves, for we had agreed that this should be done, and I was glad to be rid of his company, for he stank. For my part, I hoped never to look upon him again, but Gandalf came and endured long speech with him. Yes, long and weary, said Gandalf, but not without profit. For one thing, the tale he told of his loss agreed with that which Bilbo has now told openly for the first time, but that mattered little, since I had already guessed it. But I learned then, first, that Gollum's ring came out of the great river, nigh to the Gladden fields, and I learned also that he had possessed it long, many lives of his small kind. The power of the ring had lengthened his years far beyond their span, but that power only the great rings wield. And if that is not proof enough, Galdor, there is the other test that I spoke of. Upon this very ring which you have seen here held aloft, round and unadorned, the letters that Isildur reported may still be read. If one has the strength of will to set the golden thing in the fire a while, that I have done, and this I have read. Ash-Nazig Durbatuluk, Ash-Nazig Gimbatul, Ash-Nazig Thrakatuluk, Ag Burzum Ishi Krimpatul. The change in the wizard's voice was astounding. Suddenly it became menacing, powerful, harsh as stone. A shadow seemed to pass over the high sun, and the porch for a moment grew dark. All trembled, and the elves stopped their ears. Never before has any voice dared to utter words of that tongue in Imladris, Gandalf the Grey, said Elrond, as the shadow passed and the company breathed once more. And let us hope that none will ever speak it here again, answered Gandalf. Nonetheless, I do not ask your pardon, Master Elrond, for if that tongue is not soon to be heard in every corner of the West, then let all put doubt aside that this thing is indeed what the wise have declared, the treasure of the enemy, fraught with all his malice, and in it lies a great part of his strength of old. Out of the black years came the words that the smiths of Eregion heard, and they knew that they had been betrayed. One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them. Know also, my friends, that I learned more yet from Gollum. He was loath to speak, and his tale was unclear, but it is beyond all doubt that he went to Mordor, and there all that he knew was forced from him. Thus the enemy knows now that the one is found, that it was long in the Shire, and since his servants have pursued it almost to our door, he soon will know. Already he may know, even as I speak, that we have it here. All sat silent for a while, until at length Boromir spoke. He is a small thing, you say, this Gollum? Small but great in mischief. What became of him? To what doom did you put him? He is in prison, but no worse, said Aragorn. He had suffered much. There is no doubt that he was tormented, and the fear of Sauron lies black on his heart. Still, I for one am glad that he is safely kept by the watchful elves of Mirkwood. His malice is great, and gives him a strength hardly to be believed in one so lean and withered. He could work much mischief still if he were free, and I do not doubt that he was allowed to leave Mordor on some evil errand. "Alas, alas!" cried Legolas, and in his fair elvish face there was great distress. "The tidings that I was sent to bring must now be told. They are not good, but only here have I learned how evil they may seem to this company. Smeagol, who is now called Gollum, has escaped." "Escaped?" cried Aragorn. "That is ill news indeed. We shall all rue it bitterly, I fear. How came the folk of Thranduil to fail in their trust?" "Not through lack of watchfulness," said Legolas, "but perhaps through over-kindliness. And we fear that the prisoner had aid from others, and that more is known from our doings than we could wish. We guarded this creature day and night at Gandalf's bidding, much though we wearied of the task, but Gandalf made us hope still for his cure. We had not the heart to keep him ever in dungeons under the earth, where he would fall back into his old black thoughts." "You are less tender to me," said Gloin with a flash in his eyes, as old memories were stirred of his imprisonment in the deep places of the Elven King's halls. Yeah, these elves aren't very good jailers, because Bilbo and the dwarves escaped, and now Gollum escaped too. "Now come," said Gandalf. "Pray do not interrupt, my good Gloin. That was a regrettable misunderstanding, long set right. If all the grievances that stand between elves and dwarves are to be brought up here, we may as well abandon this council." Gloin rose and bowed, and Legolas continued. "In the days of fair weather we led Gollum through the woods, and there was a high tree standing alone far from the others which he liked to climb. Often we let him mount up to the highest branches until he felt the free wind, but we set a guard at the tree's foot. One day he refused to come down, and the guards had no mind to climb after him. He had learned the trick of clinging to boughs with his feet as well as with his hands, so they sat by the tree far into the night. It was that very night of summer, yet moonless and starless, that orcs came on us unawares. We drove them off after some time. They were many and fierce, but they came from over the mountains and were unused to the woods. When the battle was over, we found that Gollum was gone, and his guards were slain or taken. It then seemed plain to us that the attack had been made for his rescue, and that he knew of it beforehand. How that was contrived we cannot guess, but Gollum is cunning, and the spies of the enemy are many. The dark things that were driven out in the year of the Dragon's Fall have returned in great numbers, and Mirkwood is again an evil place, save where our realm is maintained. We have failed to recapture Gollum. We came on his trail among those of many orcs, and it plunged deep into the forest going south. But ere long it escaped our skill, and we dared not continue the hunt, for we were drawing nigh to Dol Guldur, and that is still a very evil place. We do not go that way." "Well, well, he is gone," said Gandalf. "We have no time to seek for him again. He must do what he will, but he may play a part yet that neither he nor Sauron have foreseen. And now I will answer Galdor's other questions. What is Saruman? What are his counsels to us in this need? This tale I must tell in full, for only Elrond has heard it yet, and that in brief, but it will bear on all that we must resolve. It is the last chapter in the Tale of the Ring, so far as has yet gone. At the end of June, I was in the Shire, but a cloud of anxiety was on my mind, and I rode to the southern borders of the little land. For I had foreboding of some danger, still hidden from me, but drawing near. The messages reached me telling me of war and defeat in Gondor, and when I heard the Black Shadow, a chill smote my heart. But I found nothing save a few fugitives from the south, yet it seemed to me that on them sat a fear of which they would not speak. I turned them east and north. I turned then east and north and journeyed along the Greenway, and not far from Bree I came upon a traveller sitting on a bank beside the road with his grazing horse beside him. It was Radagast the Brown, who at one time dwelt at uh, Rosgobel, near the borders of Mirkwood. He is one of my order, but I had not seen him for many a year. You guys remember Radagast the Brown from The Hobbit? Crazy wizard that had all the animals with him all the time. Gandalf, he cried, I was seeking you, but I am a stranger in these parts. All I knew was that you might be found in a wild region with the uncouth name of Shire. Your information was correct, I said, but do not put it that way. If you meet any of the inhabitants, you are near the borders of the Shire now. And what do you want with me? It must be pressing. You were never a traveler unless driven by great need. I have an urgent errand, he said. My news is evil. Then he looked about him as if the hedges might have ears. Nazgul, he whispered. The Nine are abroad again. They have crossed the river secretly and are moving westward. They have taken the guise of riders in black. I knew then what I had dreaded without knowing it. The enemy must have some great need or purpose, said Radagast. But what it is that makes him look into these distant and desolate parts, I cannot guess. What do you mean, said I. I have been told that where they go, the riders ask for news of a land called Shire. The Shire, I said, but my heart sank, for even the wise might fear to withstand the Nine when they are gathered together under their fell chieftain. A great king and sorcerer he was of old, and now he wields a deadly fear. Who told you, and who sent you? I asked. Saruman the White, answered Radagast, and he told me to say that if you feel the need, he will help, but you must seek his aid at once, or it will be too late. And that message brought me hope, for Saruman the White is the greatest of my order. Radagast is, of course, a worthy wizard, a master of shapes and changes of hue, but he has much lore of herbs and beasts, and birds are especially his friends. But Saruman has long studied the arts of the enemy himself, and thus we have often been able to forestall him. It was by the devices of Saruman that we drove him from Dol Guldur. It might be that he had found some weapons that would drive back the Nine. I will go to Saruman, I said. Then you must go now, said Radagast, for I have wasted time looking for you, and the days are running short. I was told to find you before midsummer, and that is now here. Even if you set out from this spot, you will hardly reach him before the Nine discover the land that they seek. I myself shall turn back at once. With that, he mounted and would have ridden straight off. Stay a moment, I said. We shall need your help, and the help of all things that will give it. Send out messages to all the beasts and birds that are your friends. Tell them to bring news of anything that bears on this matter to Saruman and Gandalf. Let the messages be sent to Orthanc. I will do that, he said, and rode off as if the Nine were after him. I could not follow him then and there. I had ridden very far already that day, and I was as weary as my horse, and I needed to consider matters. I stayed the night in Bree, and decided that I had no time to return to the Shire. Never did I make a greater mistake. However, I wrote a message to Frodo, and trusted it to my friend the innkeeper to send it to him. I rode away at dawn, and I came at long last to the dwelling of Saruman. That is far south in Isengard, in the end of the Misty Mountains, not far from the Gap of Rohan. And Boromir will tell you that that is a great open vale that lies between the Misty Mountains and the northmost foothills of Ered Nimrais, the White Mountains of his home. But Isengard is a circle of sheer rocks that enclose a valley as with a wall, and in the midst of that valley is a tower of stone called Orthanc. It was not made by Saruman, but by men of Numenor long ago, and it is very tall and has many crests, yet it looks not to be a work of craft. It cannot be reached save by passing the circle of Isengard, and in that circle there is only one gate. Late one evening I came to the gate, like a great arch in the wall of rock, and it was strongly guarded. But the keepers of the gate were on the watch for me and told me that Saruman awaited me. I rode under the arch, and the gate closed silently behind me, and suddenly I was afraid, though I knew no reason for it. But I rode to the foot of Orthanc, and came to the stair of Saruman, and there he met me and led me up to his high chamber. He wore a ring on his finger. "So you have come, Gandalf," he said to me gravely, but in his eyes there seemed to be a white light, as if a cold laughter was in his heart. "Yes, I have come," I said. "I have come for your aid, Saruman the White." And that title seemed to anger him. "Have you indeed, Gandalf the Grey?" he scoffed. "For aid? It has seldom been heard that Gandalf the Grey sought for aid. One so cunning and so wise, wandering about the lands and concerning himself in every business, whether it belongs to him or not." I looked at him and wondered. "But if I am not deceived," said I, "things are now moving which will require the union of all our strength." "That may be so," he said, "but the thought is late in coming to you. How long, I wonder, have you concealed from me, the head of the council, a matter of great import? What brings you now from your lurking place in the Shire?" "The Nine have come forth again," I answered. "They have crossed the river, so Radagast said to me." "Radagast the Brown," laughed Saruman, and he no longer concealed his scorn. "Radagast the bird tamer, Radagast the simple, Radagast the fool." Yet he had just the wit to play the part that I set him. "For you have come, and that was all the purpose of my message, and here you will stay, Gandalf the Grey, and rest from journeys. For I am Saruman the Wise, Saruman Ringmaker, Saruman of many colors." I looked then and saw that his robes, which had seemed white, were not so, but were woven of all colors, as if he moved, and if he moved, they shimmered and changed hue so that the eye was bewildered. "I like the white better," I said. "White!" he sneered. "It serves as a beginning. White cloth may be dyed, the white page can be overwritten, and the white light can be broken." "In which case it is no longer white," said I, "and he that breaks a thing to find out what it is has left the path of wisdom." "You need not speak to me as to one of the fools that you take for your friends," said he. "I have not brought you hither to be instructed by you, but to give you a choice." Hang on a second, kiddos. All right, I'm back. He drew himself up then and began to declaim as if he were making a speech long rehearsed. "The elder days are gone. The middle days are passing. The younger days are beginning. The time of the elves is over, but our time is at hand, the world of men, which we must rule. But we must have power, power to order all things as we will, for that good which only the wise can see. And listen, Gandalf, my old friend and helper," he said, coming near and speaking now in a softer voice. "I said we, for we, it may be, if you will join with me. A new power is rising. Against it, the old allies and policies will not avail us at all. There is no hope left in the elves, or dying Numenor. This then is one choice before you, before us. We may join with that power. It would be wise, Gandalf. There is hope that way. Its victory is at hand, and there will be rich reward for those that aided it. As the power grows, its proved friends will also grow, and the wise, such as you and I, may with patience come at last to direct its courses, to control it. We can bide our time. We can keep our thoughts in our hearts. Deploring maybe evils done by the way, but approving the high and ultimate purpose. Knowledge, rule, order, all the things that we have so far striven in vain to accomplish, hindered rather than helped by our weak or idle friends. There would not be any real change in our designs, only in our means. Saruman, I said, I have heard speeches of this kind before, but only in the mouths of emissaries sent from Mordor, to deceive the ignorant. I cannot think that you brought me so far only to weary my ears. He looked at me sidelong and paused a while considering. Well, I see that this wise course does not commend itself to you, he said. Not yet? Not if some better way can be contrived? He came and laid his long hand on my arm. And why not, Gandalf? He whispered. Why not? The ruling ring? If we could command that, then the power would pass to us. That is in truth why I brought you here, for I have many eyes in my service, and I believe that you know where this precious thing now lies. Is it not so? Or why do the Nine ask for the Shire, and what is your business there? As he said this, a lust which he could not conceal shone suddenly in his eyes. Saruman, I said, standing away from him, only one hand at a time can wield the one, and you know that well, so do not trouble to say we. But I would not give it, nay, I would not give even news of it to you, now that I learn your mind. You were head of the council, but you have unmasked yourself at last. Well, the choices are, it seems, to submit to Sauron or to yourself. I will take neither. Have you others to offer? He was cold now and perilous. Yes, he said, I did not expect you to show wisdom, even in your own behalf, but I gave you the chance of aiding me willingly, and so saving yourself much trouble and pain. The third choice is to stay here until the end. Until what end? Until you reveal to me where the one may be found, I may find means to persuade you, or until it is found in your despite, and the ruler has time to turn to lighter matters, to devise, say, a fitting reward for the hindrance and insolence of Gandalf the Grey. That may not prove one of the lighter matters, said I. He laughed at me, for my words were empty, and he knew it. All right, that's where we're going to stop for now, kiddos. I love you always and forever, no matter what.